Would the inverted spear of heaven do anything against Sukuna? Let's talk about that and a bunch of other questions straight from you guys. However, spoiler warning, this batch of questions is all going to be from the manga, so if you're not caught up, you might want to skip this one. Alright, so first up we've got these questions from Onmyoto asking if Jacob's ladder would work on Sukuna while in Yuji's body, and also if the inverted spear of heaven would. So let's tackle this in two parts. First of all, Jacob's ladder would absolutely work. There's nothing unique about the fact of Sukuna being in Megami's body that makes him susceptible to Jacob's ladder. It would have been the exact same for Yuji, because the way that works is it's attempting to nullify the cursed object that is Sukuna within Megami's body. So same thing would be at play in Yuji's body. And this is actually the same thing at play with any incarnated sorcerer in this way, which is why Angel's mission is to clear the world of these abominations. That's like her purpose. The focus is on Sukuna for sure, because he is the fallen one and, op number one. But Angel actually wanted to get rid of all of the incarnated sorcerers, and she would do so with Jacob's ladder. So yeah, again, Yuji would just be an incarnated sorcerer in that same sense. Now, as far as the inverted spear of heaven, that's interesting. I don't know how it would interact because we really just don't have enough data about it to make that assumption, right? But I just recently put out a video on the inverted spear, and in that video, we talk about the similarities between it and Angel's curse technique. So it conceivably could do something like extra harmful to incarnated sorcerers or Sukuna, right? But it might be specifically only for nullifying curse techniques. That might be the unique application of nullification that was applied to the inverted spear. And in that case, I don't know that it would do anything extra to Sukuna besides just, any other normal dagger might do. But really interesting kind of thought experiment, especially considering that third blade is still out there somewhere and, maybe it'll come up in this final arc. Next up, we got a couple of questions revolving around Sukuna's curse technique. We've got this one from Dalton and the one up top from Sawan. I do hopefully plan on making a video kind of collecting all of my scattered thoughts on this at some point. But to address these things here now, if Sukuna is a conjoined twin, and I put out a video on this earlier this week, so check that out for more context. It's about Sukuna's true form. So if that's true and he is a conjoined twin, then yeah, I could see the flame arrow potentially being his twin's curse technique. That wouldn't be my first guess though. Even if he is a conjoined twin, I don't think flame arrow would be it necessarily, because the black box seemingly has a lot to do with this, right? So maybe black box is Sukuna's technique and flame arrow was his twins and he put it in there, or maybe his twins is the black box. I don't know. There's a lot around this, right? And then up here we're talking about the black box, and if the cursed tools could have been consumed by Sukuna and placed in the black box for further use. And I think that's entirely possible too. These kind of go hand in hand. My general thoughts on it for now, and again, I do plan on making a longer video on this at some point, is that Sukuna's technique, not that it is black box, but that he is able to store either techniques or cursed tools or storage of cursed energy to some form, and he can retrieve it when he wants. And thus, the flame arrow was him retrieving something. And to speak on your technique, if that retrieval could be based on cursed tools that he absorbs or cursed techniques, right? I know this was very scattered, but yeah, anything's possible at this point. Next up, we've got this question from Belted, who I believe donated both on Cash App and YouTube. Thank you so much. For future reference, unnecessary to donate on both, but I appreciate you. And I'm not 100% sure this is the same person, but I think it is. So thank you. But they wanted to know, what if Gojo had won against Sukuna? What would Kenjaku do? And I think his plans would have pretty much been the same, because we know right before the Gojo-Sukuna fight, he's kind of thinking to himself, and he's saying that if Gojo loses, Akotsu and the rest of them are going to have to jump Sukuna, because that's going to be their best chance to take him down. So interestingly, he doesn't say when Sukuna loses. So in his mind, he thinks it's possible that either one of them could win, right? He may think Sukuna has better odds or something, but at the very least, it wasn't a known quantity in his mind. So I think he would have had contingencies in place if Sukuna had lost. Now, really not much would have been different, in my opinion, though. Obviously, if Sukuna had lost, then everyone would have been gunning for Kenjaku, because that would have been the only thing left to worry about, right? But even in the face of Kenjaku's own death, which we've seen happened, even though Sukuna won, he had plans, right? He moved the merger to Sukuna/Megami. Now, obviously, if Sukuna was dead, he wouldn't be able to do that, right? But I think he would have had someone else to give the merger to. Maybe Uruume or, maybe just somebody else entirely. Bottom line is, I think he absolutely had a plan, and I think the merger still would have gone off, presumably. I mean, it hasn't even gone off yet, but I think it will. So I think it also would have had Gojo won. Obviously, this is something we're never going to have the answer to because it didn't play out that way. But knowing Kenjaku's strategic mind, I think he definitely had pieces in place to make sure that merger goes off no matter who won. Next up, we got this question from Ildi, who asks, if you could come up with the plot for a JJK movie, what would it be? Great question. I know a lot of people want the Gojo Sukuna fight to be a movie, and I'm not against that. I certainly think the higher budget and therefore higher production value that would come from being a movie would benefit that fight greatly. Like, that would be awesome to see. But I just don't know how you pace out a Gojo Sukuna movie, because Gojo gets unsealed, there's a time skip, and the fight happens. So would the movie literally just be the fight? And then where do you end it? Like, do you end it at Gojo's 50% discount, or do you end it at whatever the conclusion to this fight's going to be, which hasn't even happened yet, So I'm not against it, but I don't know how that would work. So for my money, I would love to see a movie about the history of JJK. Like, give us a movie during the Heian era, like Sukuna at his strongest, at his prime, or even, it doesn't even have to be about Sukuna. Like, give us a movie even further in the past about the origins of Jujutsu Society, or that rumor or that fake lie, I guess, that was about the Toji movie. Like, that would actually be really cool to see a young Toji. Or what would be really cool would be a movie set around that fight between the previous Six Eyes Limitless user and the Ten Shadows user. Whatever was like going around there that made them fight, political strife, whatever. I feel like you could set a really cool movie around that. Next up, we got this question from Shay Derry, and speaking of the Ten Shadows, they are wanting to know how exactly the Ten Shadows works with Sukuna / Megumi. Now, I've put out a few different videos talking about the Ten Shadows, not necessarily going into this in depth, but I would definitely recommend checking some of those out. I think I literally have like 3 or 4. But for my money, they share the same curse technique, meaning all of the Shikigami that have died under Sukuna's command, Megumi has lost as well. So Megumi can no longer use Maharaga, in my opinion. There is still totality, which again gives like powers of deceased Shikigami to other Shikigami. So I don't think Megumi's just completely out of luck if he's able to come out of this. He'll still be able to use his technique somewhat. But yeah, for my money, they don't have like different libraries of Ten Shadows. Like, it's just one. So whatever happens to one user is going to happen to the other. Next up, we got this question from Ness on if Sukuna could be the result of a Heian era merger. This is really interesting. I definitely think it's within the realm of possibility. And Ness actually went on to further explain to me that Yuji might be the vessel for the current merger, and so could Sukuna have been something similar in the past. I do think more so that Yuji could end up being the vessel or somewhat involved in the modern day merger, because we know Kenjaku made him for a purpose, and I think it was more than just housing Sukuna. So I think you might be onto something there. But as far as if Sukuna was one in the past, again, I think it's possible, but I think that's less likely, because I think whatever Kenjaku is doing with this merger is the first time he's done it. After 1,000 years, he's been led to this point. Now, it's not to tell you that something similar, but not the exact same, could have happened way back when, and that's what got us to Sukuna. But we'll just have to see. Next up, we got this question from Ty on how did Sukuna not die to Gojo's Hollow Purple? This is a great question. I see people talk about this all the time, and it's mostly because anytime we've seen Hollow Purple, it just deletes anything, right? However, that's not just absolutely how it functions. It is still cursed energy at the end of the day, so Sukuna was able to rebuke it somewhat due to his own cursed energy reinforcement. Now, would anybody else in the verse be able to do that? I don't think so. I think that's just a testament to the two of their levels. And even Sukuna wasn't able to get away unscathed. He lost an arm and got pretty burnt up. So basically, Sukuna's just him. Next up, we got this question from Ness on if Yuji, Maki, and Kashimo are special grade. So here's what I'll say. Based on the definition that Kenjaku gives us, that a special grade can take over a country by themselves, I would say no. They just don't have the arsenal, if you will, to get that done. However, based on strength level alone, I would say yes. I would say they are going to be in that tier. Next, we got 2 questions from Thomas. The first is, could Gojo still be alive? And I think yes. I've got a whole video explaining all my reasons for that, so check that out. And then, could Maki hit a Black Flash? And no, because you have to have cursed energy to hit a Black Flash. Ran out of time in this video, but thank you and see you in the next one.